Welcome back, Wavesa, and today I figured we would talk about a hypothetical leak that I had found. And by hypothetical leak, I mean something I wish had happened, but we're going to say that we're in an alternate dimension in the warp. And a little birdie dropped off on our way to the fifth sphere of expansion, a datasheet that would be most useful in addition to the Tau Empire that we have. A new commander. We don't have a wide enough variety of commanders. Maybe I would say probably a stealth suit commander would be cool, but we're going to get the next best thing. Another named character, another pure follower of the teachings of Pure Tide, and that will be Shas'O Kais. Or Kais. I don't know. I'm no Case. So today I figured I would look at this little leak that I found. And by leak, I mean datasheet that I dreamt up for myself. And I would say that some of you might like it well enough that you'd want to run it in your own armies and let me know how it goes. I haven't come up with a points limit on it, so I was thinking maybe we'll have him cost as much as the Cold Star battlesuit, something around like 110 or so. I would say in order to make it balanced. But anyways, we'll dive right on into what the little work bird of Zinch dropped off for us to look at and how the greater good truly is expanding. So, for those of you who don't know, Shas'O Kais is the third of Pure Tide's students, lesser known from Farsight and Shadow Sun. He is the master not of Mont Ka, not of Kayun, but Mon At, which is the way of the lone warrior. He is pretty much a one-man army. He's a Tau commander, and he commands a force that greatly utilizes auxiliaries and allies for the Tau. And he cares very deeply about the greater good, and this shows through his care for his variety of warriors and the unity that he likes to display in his force. And he's even so compassionate and believes such in the greater good, so much so that he will offer surrender to orcs and to chaos, which is quite surprising because the orcs aren't particularly known for surrendering, and chaos are all about corrupting everything. So I don't know how prudent this is, but honestly, if you were the master of the one-man army, I think you would probably get away with offering a surrender to people that would never surrender to begin with. So he was put into stasis like Shadow Sun is during in between missions, but the difference between the two of them is he's awake during the stasis period, and this amount of perpetual awakeness throughout his stasis made it so that he had just time to plan and plot and plan and plot and figure out every way to defeat every possible enemy. And in doing so, I don't think he went crazy, but he became just the one-man monster that he is known in the lore as. And he ended up getting dropped off, I think, on a Dark Angels Fortress Monastery planet, and just ran solo against the entire force of Space Marines there in an experimental ghost kill. So he is literally the one-man army, and he needs no support. So let's get on into what I gave for his loadout, so I hope that it will reflect very well what he is in the lore. So I looked at the Dawn of War video game in order to see who Case was, what he looks like, and what his weapon loadout could be. I also took a couple instances from the wiki. So we'll go through his base loadout. He has a 12-inch move. That's because the wiki said he uploaded his stealth suit to get an extra boost in jetpack to it. So I figured he can move as much as a crisis suit. I was going to make him T5, but I looked at him compared to Farsight, and he's definitely small. He's 100% on a T4 base. His save is 3, like all of the other stealth suits. I did give him a 4+ invulnerable save because he's a character. So I assumed that if he didn't have a shield generator, he has a shield drone by him, and I gave him the high energy shield drone that would make it so that he would have a 4+ save, so he'd have that extra durability, make him actually feel lethal. I gave him 7 wounds, that is in between the 8 that Farsight has and the 6 that Shadow Sun has, so I figured that'd be fairly reasonable. 6+ leadership because he's a one-man army. Shadow Sun has a 6+, so I figured he could have the 6+, and because he's a one-man army and he's a little bit more of staying power, if he were to charge off and do his own thing and take objectives, he gets 3 OC. From there, we go on to the weapon loadout, and I figured that he needed a little bit more. I would go purely off of what he has in the Dawn of War and a little bit off of what the wiki says. So he's got his 2 shoulder-mounted missile pods, which I gave at 30 inches of range, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 2+ because he's a commander, strength 7, AP -2 because I think he needs that extra lethality, and 2 damage. After that, there's the plasma rifle. I upped its range to range 24. I figured, get the old range back. he does experiment on a lot of his gear, so that'd be necessary. He's got a ballistic skill of 2+, obviously, strength 8, AP -3, 3 damage. And then he's got the fusion blaster. Like I said, he experiments with this stuff. He's got Melta 2 on it, but he's got the range of 18. I didn't give him the strength 10 like ShadowSun has, because I figured this would be sufficient. AP -4, D6 damage, 1 attack. He's got Tau Flamer, which is Torrent and ignores cover. 12 inches is just like every other Tau Flamer, but I also gave him the high output burst cannon, because as a commander, even though he's hauling around in the stealth suit, I figured a high output burst cannon would make sense, because I'd seen a couple of clips of him with the burst cannon, so 8 shots, hitting on 2s, strength 5, 0 AP, 1 damage. And then he's got Battlesuit Fist, and I figured I'd make him hit harder than ShadowSun, but not as hard as Farsight, where he's got 5 attacks, strength 2, strength 5, weapon skill 2+, no AP, and only 1 damage. So from here, we get into his abilities, and I think that it would be good. It was good because he runs alone. He doesn't seem like a very lead in a squad kind of guy. He's got a variety of people that he, different aliens he'd be running with, so he wouldn't necessarily always be leading a unit of anything. So I figured he'd fit in very well if you were a very strong standalone sheet. Like he could be thrown into the crew detachment and still be very formidable. So he's lone op, infiltrators, and stealth. So he doesn't lead anybody. He's not a leader like he does insofar as like on the battlefield. He's a force to be reckoned with, but he's not going to be leading any stealth suit squads or any crisis suit squads, as cool as I think that might be. I gave him the agile combatant that ShadowSun has. Like this model is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. I thought about shoot and charge, but I figured that might be a little bit too much for potentially lethal Tau unit. I figured we can back off on all my dreams of what an ideal melee force for Tau would be like. So after that, I gave him an ability I made up, Pure Tide's Apprentice. And it's once per your enemy's shooting phase, when this model is targeted for a ranged attack by an enemy unit, it can either make a normal move where then the enemy can choose another target, or this model can shoot at the enemy unit as though it's its shooting phase. So I was thinking this would be a very good ability. It's like, you sure you want to shoot it? He might hit you back. He's a one-man army, like a tank. And also, he would be able to move out of the way and react to people coming around because he's all on his own out there. So I stole this a little bit from Slime Marble because he's a little bit of the one-man army for the Catachan, but our guy's cooler and got a cool battle suit, so he can jump away or he can shoot back. After that, I gave him the Lone Warrior ability, and it's not so much an ability, more of a debuff, because this model cannot be affected by detachment rules, which makes perfect sense because if he's a one-man army out there on his own, he's not particularly made to jive with everybody else. He's all about being solo, running on his own, which is why I made him for this, so he wouldn't have any crazy buff with any of the stratagems, with any of the detachment rules, and he would just be able to be a solid piece that you could plop down and be like, look, here's how good he is, and let him do his own work, doing his own thing. After that, for his war gear abilities, I see him typically having a drone that is a gun drone and a shield drone following him around, so I gave him the gun drone token. That was the command linked gun drone, which gives the bearer gains the assault and twin linked keywords for all of their weapons. So he's a bit more mobile, and he doesn't need any extra support, and he can just hit hard on his own because the gun drone, he doesn't actually have a gun drone, doesn't actually shoot or anything. It has assault and has twin linked on its weapons. So I figured I'd just give it to all of his weapons, which would make him that much more of a lethal force. Obviously, we already talked about the high energy shield drone, where the bearer gets a 4+ invulnerable save. Makes sense. He needs a little bit more of that oomph and durability. He's going to be running up the field and messing with everybody. After that, I gave him the weapon support system, which is each time the bearer makes a ranged attack, you can ignore any or all modifiers in hit roll. So he will always be consistent. This guy is pretty much going to be a rock. He's going to stand there. He will never falter. He will be able to hit on 2s no matter what all the time. And then coupled with that, he'll be re-rolling everything to wound. So playing very heavily into that one-man army kind of mentality. For keywords, infantry, fly, character, epic hero, battlesuit, Commander Kais. Pretty simple stuff. After that, for his loadout, because I know that you guys are thinking, well, clearly you can't have a plasma rifle, fusion blaster, twin flavors, and a high output burst cannon. I looked at what exactly his base loadout would be, and then we could soup him up as you can with the other commanders. So he's equipped with missile pods ×2, and a high output burst cannon, and then the battlesuit fist. So after that, this model's high output burst cannon can be replaced with one of the following: a fusion blaster, 2 Tau flamers, because if you notice, if you see any of his poses and whatnot, he's got the double flamer thing going on, or 1 plasma rifle. And then after that, this model can be equipped with one of the following: in addition to the high output burst cannon, the fusion blaster, the 2 Tau flamers that are together, and a plasma rifle. That being said, you can't have any duplicates. You can't give him a bunch of Tau flamers, you can't have him double fusion blasters or double plasma rifles. You have to have the weird, funky combo. I figured that would hinder him a little bit. You couldn't fine-tune him in one specific direction. But I would assume anyone running him would probably go the full anti-infantry route, or he would go the full anti-tank route. Like, you give him the fusion blaster and the plasma rifle, or you'd give him the Tau flamers and the high output burst cannon. The missile pods will be consistent. They'll always be there. You can't get rid of them. They're just mounted on his shoulders. Either way, I haven't really done the math on him to see how balanced he is or how much lethal ability he has in order to wipe the floor with everybody. But I figured that this would keep him on his own little level. He won't get the boosts from being in the retaliation cadre. He won't get any boosts from being in the Montka or Taiyun detachment. And he wasn't going to get boosts anyways from being in the crew detachment, but this makes him a pretty good standalone unit. And he can just do his work and run with his traditional army without having to worry about him being too terribly debuffed. So anyways, this is my gift, I suppose, to you. I would be very curious if any of you end up deciding to run him or use him or anything like that. And if you do decide to run him or use him or anything like that, I would suggest these guys. Who these guys are, I'm not exactly sure, but they made a Shas'O Kais 3D printed model called Colts3D.com. They have this thing called the Lone Warrior Space Communist Podium Base. I think you need a 3D printer in order to download the STL. I don't think they print it out and send it to you, but if any of you guys are interested in anything like that, these guys have an awesome looking model. Highly recommend if you want Kais in your army, definitely check these guys out. I guess I can leave a link in the description. They're not sponsoring me for this or anything, but I figured that it's fun. I think they're fun. I'm always for people expanding the hobby in interesting, new, different ways. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and let me know if any of y'all think about using him, or let me know how your battles go if you do use him. And who else you think would be a cool addition from the lore or different characters or different units that you think the town need to add to their repertoire. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and I'd like to thank my patrons: Der Estat, Anu Vivek, Samjer, Ryan Hall, David Polilio, K-Mag, Jonathan Patino, Chris F., Mark, Magnus Thrody, and created by Philip. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for helping support and keep the lights on out here. I am very appreciative, and I hope your day goes for the greater good. God bless you, folks.